Hi, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to the Conversation Shop. We have our first guest on the show, and I'm very, very, very excited to have her on the show, Miss Gloria Reyes.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yes, welcome. Why don't you start by just telling my audience a little bit about yourself,
Sure.
who you are, and
Sure.
what you represent?
Sure. So, I grew up in Madison. I've been here all my life, pretty much. My parents were migrant farm workers, so moved here early on. They started working in Wautoma, Wisconsin, of all places.
Okay.
And then they moved here to Madison, Wisconsin shortly after I was born. So went to Madison East High School, went to UW-Madison, and just never left. I've spent most of my career in public service. I started my career at the Public Defender's Office.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, and then I worked for the Wisconsin Department of Justice.
Okay.
And then I had spent 12 years in law enforcement.
Okay.
And currently, I'm Deputy Mayor for Public Safety. I also have other areas under my responsibility, and that is Public Health, Department of Civil Rights, and I also have education as part of my areas of responsibility.
Okay.
Now I am starting this new venture, and I'm candidate for Madison School Board.
Yes.
So
I can't wait to talk to you about
yes,
that.
yes.
But I want to start by saying, sincerely, we are blessed to have you.
Thank you.
We're blessed to have you as a deputy mayor, and we're definitely going to be blessed to have you as a member of the school board. I believe in
you.
speaking things into being. Okay.
Thank you.
But what I'd like to do, just right away, I'd like to just jump right into it.
Sure.
Why don't you start by telling my audience, what's your platform? What's your perspective? Like, what do you stand for?
Sure, sure. I mean, I think, as a longtime resident of Madison and growing up here, going through our public schools and having even children in our public schools, I understand the importance of having a strong public school, right, and how it feeds into a strong city and community. I had great teachers. I had great staff within our school district who supported me despite all the challenges that I experienced growing up, right? I mean, I grew up in poverty. I grew up in Kennedy Heights, Darbo, all the neighborhoods, right, in Madison that are known for families who live in poverty. So I understand all those challenges. I am an example of what we do right in this community. And throughout my professional career in public service, whether it be law enforcement, the Wisconsin State Public Defender's Office, and now in the Mayor's Office, I see a strong correlation of how education plays a role in the success of our students and our families, right?
Oh, yes.
My dad always told me that education was going to be my way out of poverty, and that's exactly what happened. It really helped me significantly, and it was due to having strong teachers and a support system and community that helped me. So I think my platform is innovation and creation and creativity in the classroom, right? Allowing our teachers to be able to be innovative and they are the experts in the classroom. We should let them do their work, right? Being able to engage their students in a way that they learn best. Also, economic development. We have to prepare our students for the workforce, providing them pathways to options and opportunities, right? If a four-year degree is not for them, I think we should support them to a four-year degree in a school, but not all of our children may not want to do that, right? So what are other options for them? A two-year technical college, right? Madison College. That's where I started before I transferred to UW, and it was great for me. So Madison College. And
we met at MATC.
Right, right.
Right, definitely.
Yeah, so I mean, I think that's important, right, is to provide options for our students. And then also public safety. I mean, my whole career has been around public safety. I currently am involved in so many of our challenges and our issues surrounding public safety in our community. And what happens in our community transfers into what's happening in our schools and vice versa.
Right.
And so I think ensuring a safe environment and a safe and healthy environment for our children and our students is so important. It's the foundation of being able to help our teachers do their job and help our students feel like they feel safe in the classroom. And so And so, I mean, safety, economic development, and then also really the innovation and creativity in the classroom.
Okay.
And then a whole bunch of things underneath that.
I
right?
got you. I got you. Well,
yeah.
you said something earlier that I wanted to just really jump right into, which is for the students. And I always tell students all the time when I go into the classrooms, you should do it all the time in Minnesota and in Atlanta. And I tell kids, especially minority kids, it's keys. I say, what we're talking about is keys. You know, bachelor's degree, associate's degree, it's a key to unlocking a door for an opportunity.
Right.
We live in a, for lack of a better term, we live in a capitalistic society. The way for upward mobility within that society, which is what Dr. Martin Luther King figured out, was through education. You learn, so you can earn, so you can build.
Right.
And I'll be honest with you, that's something that I see in your community a lot. I see your community truly building and pushing those values to the forefront, and also in the African American community as well. But you know, I want to talk about, to me, there's a lack of, how can I put it, of fire behind education being the way out. Education being your key to being successful. And I think it's been one of the most destructive things to our young people over the past 20 years, to be honest with you. You know, I love music. I love a lot of different things. But, you know, when you know who Tupac and Biggie is, but you don't know who Marcus Garvey is, and you don't know anything about Martin Luther King, you don't know anything about Sojourner Truth, you don't know, anything about Harriet Tubman. You don't know what came before you. So if you don't know what came before you, how are you going to move forward? So those kinds of things truly disturb me. So I want to ask you, do you have an opinion in regards to how do we inspire kids to believe that education is everything that you and I know it to be?
Right. I mean, I think, as you know, our children are struggling with so many different challenges outside the classroom, and it is giving them a sense of hope. And when we give them a sense of hope that there's something other than what they're living day in and day out, then that's what's going to give them the inspiration and understanding of how important education is. But we need to do that as a community. Our teachers can't do that alone. And our families can't do that alone. So, although I had a strong family foundation that, my dad telling me that education was is my way out of poverty, I also had a great community base and teachers and staff in the schools who just continued, who never gave up on me, who always said, Gloria, it's not too late. You can still get it together. I can still remember Mr. Scott, Richard Scott from Madison East High School telling me that over and over and over again. He never gave up on me, right? And so I think our children are so faced with so many challenges outside the classroom that we really need to take an opportunity that when they are in our schools, that we are giving them hope.
Okay.
And what I see right now is our children just have no guidance, no support systems at home, and no hope. And it's as simple as that. It doesn't take additional funding, right? It doesn't take additional resources. What it takes is for our people to understand, our community to understand, and how to engage, particularly our students of color, our Black and Latino children. That they are that there is hope for them, and they do play a critical role. Not only have they played a critical role in the history of this country, but they play a critical role in the future of this country. And how
I
do
agree
they
totally.
Right? So
I agree totally.
Yeah.
So my question for you is, we're talking about hope, right?
yeah,
See, I think from my perspective, I think we made a mistake in education a little bit. And the mistake I think we made was we got so focused on 2 and 4 year degrees until we forgot to tell students that they had options. So when students make mistakes in school because of behavior, because of bad grades or whatnot, a lot of students that I've talked to in the past think that, when I graduate high school, there's nothing for me. I'm not going to be anything, so I might as well just walk in it right now. And they don't understand that. I always go, well, what about a trade? Because they used to have trade school, right? They used to have Job Corps. What
Right.
happened to the Job Corps?
Right.
Madison Area Technical College is what it used to be. You can go and get a certification in carpentry, you know, to be an electrician. You know, what happened to the trades and pushing the trades to students, right? What happened to telling students about those options, right? I know right now Madison College has a program in robotics that they partner with two of the top companies in the country. And I don't hear anybody talking about it, benefiting from it. It's a 9-month program, and when you're done, you're making $20 to $30 an hour.
Yeah.
But nobody's in the program. And where are we going to in the future, right? Our kids are not thinking, they're so caught up in today, they're not thinking about tomorrow. So I invest. So I know the Internet of Things is the Internet of Things is the things that's about to come.
Right.
And we have to be prepared for that. So as a person that's earning and older in the workforce, I'm going to go to Madison College and get the 9-month certification, not because I need it to be successful in the field that I'm in. I need it to be innovative and to push me forward so I'm not outdated in the field that I'm in.
Right, right.
So I teach my children to kind of look at the world and kind of push themselves in those ways. So can you tell me a little bit about how do we identify the multiple roads that our children have to be successful?
Yeah.
Can you talk about that?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to take bringing in the community and bringing in the organizations and the partnerships into the schools, right? I'm currently working with Big Step, and they do the construction and the trades, and they're going into the schools right now because they see the value of that, right? Our schools are sort of moving in that direction, right? They see the value of providing options for our children. There's a nursing program now at La Follette. So
Really?
yeah.
I didn't know
So
that.
they are really seeing the value of pathways and options for our children, and that's the route we need to go. And I think over the years we have become from, as we were talking earlier about the extremes, right?
Right.
I think we went to the extreme of a 4-year degree, and that was your only option, right? If you were not prepared for a 4-year college, then what was left for you?
Right.
Right. And so I'm all for a 4-year college. That helped me significantly. But I think when we're talking about like my brother, right? When we're talking about my father who became a welder, who made a decent living wage,
Yes.
supporting his family. So I have people in my family who were able to go into carpentry, to do work in the trades and make a decent living. And that work is needed.
And they're
in our community.
entrepreneurs.
Right.
That's what I'm saying. You know, we're teaching our kids now, they're all about being entrepreneurs and owning.
Right.
That's what I want to promote, right?
Exactly.
So that's how you can own things, right?
Yes. Yes.
By having a trade, and then you can go into business yourself, then you can teach someone else through an apprenticeship.
Exactly.
That's why I salute businesses like JP Hair Designs
Yeah.
here in Madison, you know, not to just jump on that, but
Right.
shout out to JP.
Yes. Shout out to JP.
Yeah, definitely shout out to JP. I
Yeah.
like a lot of things that he and his partners are doing
Exactly.
here in Madison, and the positive images that he and all the barbers at his shop represent here in the communities, because they are role models, and a lot of times they're the only businessmen that our children are seeing.
Right.
You know, and that, you know, I think that's great, but there's so many multiple facets of representations of us here in Madison
Yes.
until we need to get together. So I want to talk about ways, or can you tell me a little bit about how we can get more interaction between the Hispanic communities and kids, black kids, and just kids in general, so we can interact and start to break down some of these barriers that exist in the schools as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, the critical thing is we have to listen to our students. We have to listen to our kids, right? What is it that they need and what is it that they want, right? And I don't think we do enough of that. I don't think we do enough of that in the city. I don't think we do enough of that in our schools.
Okay.
So I think listening to that student voice and finding out what they need. And I think engaging, once we get that, I mean, I think being able to engage our communities of color, our businesses, and getting them involved in some of the issues that we're faced with today.
I agree.
Yeah.
I think our issues are the same.
Yeah.
So again, you're going to hear me say conversation.
Exactly.
We need to sit at the table and have a conversation.
Yep.
Great.
Yep. Yeah.
Well, we'll be right back after this. Hi, welcome back to the Conversation Shop. We were just having a conversation about community and learning about Ms. Gloria Reyes' perspective on education here in Madison. We're going to move right into talking about the achievement gap here in Madison schools between white students and black students. Ms. Reyes?
Sure.
You want to just dive right in and let's talk about it?
Sure. Let's talk about it.
Yes.
You know, I mean, that's been a challenge. It's been a real challenge. And,
Yes.
you know, I just left a presentation from, we talked about it earlier. Dr. Moore was talking about, he wrote a book on white teachers teaching black students and, you know, the challenges around that. And, you know, so it is understanding how culturally you teach our children, particularly our black and Latino
Yes.
kids, right? Understanding their culture, understanding them and how they learn. So that's what I'm talking about when we're talking about creativity and innovation in the classroom, right?
Okay.
It is about technology, but it's also more so being able to provide teachers the support necessary, like smaller class sizes, right? To be able to engage their students in a better way, that where they understand, they're able to better understand their students and their students' needs. And then also teachers understanding what they themselves bring into the classroom, understand their own cultural, you know, their bias that they bring in the classroom, and ensuring that they understand that person's culture, right? I mean, and the history, right? Teachers need to know the history of our black leaders in this country and our Latino leaders in this country, so that when our students are asking for a book, for instance, that they want to read,
Right.
that they're not providing them a book of something that they're not really interested in or they don't see themselves in. So, I mean, I think that's part of the, you know, getting our kids engaged as much as we can, so they personally are seeing themselves in as you know, being interested in education, right?
Right.
And so that's one thing. I mean, I think also we have to look at the way we label our children as special education students, right?
Oh, yes. We can talk about that for hours.
Yes, I mean, I think that is huge. I mean, so when
Yes.
we are labeling our kids as special education because they have behavior issues or, you know, some other challenges, right, that they need to be taken out of the classroom, we need to evaluate that. And so I really want to tackle that. The school district is currently moving in that direction, but we need to move with a sense of urgency. We have too many children who are entering our criminal justice system who are designated as, you know, under a special education
On
label.
Ritalin.
Yeah.
And, you know, I just have to comment on that real quickly.
Yeah, sure.
You know, and I'll just dive right in on that one. It's just funny to me that the behavior of Latino, you know, black kids, kids of color, natural behavior, growing up behavior is being designated as ADHD, you know, natural, normal behavior is being seen as something that's disruptive. And I think those are the innovative things that needs to be going in the classroom to make sure that a teacher is able to address that energy.
Right.
Because I think that because I would have been ADHD
Yeah.
if I would have been going to school in this time. But one thing I can say, and you'll keep hearing me go back to this, I truly believe meditation should be incorporated into the schools. And I'm going to say it as an educated community such as Madison, who's supposed to be very innovative. I'm surprised, especially we don't have an inner city, but the Madison schools that are inside Madison, I think are great places to learn that kind of conflict resolution and to help children kind of center themselves.
Yeah.
And, you know, the key word is centering themselves.
Exactly.
And then what I wanted to comment on is the community that you talked about. What's the community or the culture of the schools, right? So you have an educated, I'm going to always say this, you got an educated community here in Madison who truly knows that the curriculum, that the schools have to be reflective of the communities that they're in,
Right.
right?
Right.
Or you're going to upset
Yeah,
some people, right? You're going to piss some
exactly.
people off.
Yeah.
So for instance, when I was going to school, and I went to an all-black school. I went to all-black Catholic school, left there, went to public school, so I've seen all sides. But I was blessed to have teachers that went against a core curriculum and introduced other books. And a lot of people don't. I'm a family member or descendant of Alexander Dumas, who wrote The Three Musketeers. He's an African American biracial man. A lot of people don't know that he's in that canon. So I was blessed to have teachers who taught me those things,
Right.
and that pushed me forward and made me want to learn much more things, right? Because we're told that our story and our journey in this country is one-sided. It's in a single lane. When none of our journeys in this country is in a single lane. It's like branches and roots on a tree. There's multiple routes and roads
Exactly.
that led us all here.
Right.
You know, I have a great grandfather who I learned from. My grandfather, prior to him passing, was from New Guinea. Who'd ever knew that?
Right.
You know, I never knew that until maybe 4 months before he passed. So who'd have known that the road to me being who I am and where I'm at is here?
Right.
You know, and then being proud of, you know, growing up and being in Natchez, Mississippi, you know, in the midst of racism. I remember being in Natchez, walking in buildings that were labeled colored and colored and white, and being escorted off the white side. So I've experienced those kinds of things. So, and those kinds of rivalries within the schools.
Right.
So again, you know, the culture of the schools have to change to make sure that the curriculum is truly reflective of the kids and the community there. Because if you're doing that,
Right.
then there's nothing for the kids to say we're not being represented. Who wants to only see themselves in a book picking cotton and shown as slaves?
Exactly. Exactly. I mean, I think that's a great point. And then also, you know, having a diverse teachers in our classrooms,
Yes.
right, is having teachers that look like us,
Yes, yes.
who can relate to us, right?
Yes.
I think that I have a friend of mine who was in the high school, East High School, when I went to school there. She was a social worker at the time. I think she was a social worker. Now she's a psychologist for the schools. And Latina. Was amazing, and it was because I was able to relate to her, and that's how she got me, right? Mr. Scott knew how to relate to me as an African American, you know, male, knew how to relate and to capture my attention. So we need to have a diverse, you know, teachers in our schools, and not only diverse, but really understand, who are immersed, right? When we're talking about professionals in, you know, in all different areas and promoting diversity, we have to, when we're hiring people of color, is that they need to understand. They also need to be immersed into that community as well.
Right.
Right. So, I mean, I had Mr. McPike, you know, East High School principal coming into, you know, we had him coming into our neighborhoods on the weekends. He was immersed in our culture. He was immersed in our community. We knew he had our back. So, you know, I think that is critical in our schools today, is that we have to teach culturally relevant material for them to be engaged. We also have to, you know, have diverse teachers, a smaller class sizes, and we also have to take a look at how we are labeling our kids as special education.
Right.
When I first started school, I didn't know English, so I was an English language learner, and back then they didn't have resources for us, so we were designated as special education right away.
Oh, I never knew that.
For years.
Oh, wow.
Year after year, my parents would have to go into their classroom or come into the schools and said, "There's nothing wrong with her. There's nothing there. She doesn't have a special. She doesn't have to be in special education." The only reason why I recognized it was because they took me out of my regular classroom and put me in the smaller classroom. But they didn't know what to do with me. So I think it's important that that we are really careful in how we are designating our students. And if there's a trend, we need to evaluate that. if there's a trend that we are seeing a majority of our African American students who are designated individual education plans
Excuse me.
entering into our criminal justice system, then that is something we need to evaluate and look at. So the achievement gap is it is a collaborate. It's going to take a collaboration, right? Our community schools, the school district is moving towards community schools right now, which I think is so needed. I'm in strong support of community schools because of what it does is it's recognizing the value of what community brings into our public schools.
Okay.
And that's what we need to do. Is our schools can't face the challenges that they're faced with today alone.
We'll be right back after this. Hi, welcome back to the Conversation Shop with Gloria Reyes. Hi, Gloria.
Hi.
Hey, I'm really enjoying our conversation.
Yes, it's
I'm
great.
sorry we had to segue off for a little bit, but I want to dive right back into that. And what I want to talk about is what's the responsibility of the parents in this situation? And I'm going to invoke what I call other man right now. Okay, I have conversations with many different people, right, and they give me many different perspectives. So my other man perspective is this: hey, I see all your kids going to school with Gucci, Louis Vuitton. They got all the nice Jordans, hair whipped all up, looking like they're coming out of video. I can barely buy my kids, one pair of Jordans, right? They're going to school, and I look at the parents, and the parents are looking the same way, and we live in an educated community. My kids have access. They have access. There's no reason why, if they're picking up the same books that my kids are doing, and let's say everybody's on the same page language-wise and everything else, okay? Because we're admitting that those are some issues, okay? But let's say just diving right in, because I have my strong opinions about what's being said too, but diving right in. So I think it's you. I think you're not making the decision to take advantage of the opportunities that are available to you here. I think it's you. I don't think people that look like you want to succeed. And I think it's reflective in your kids and their academic performance. Now it's reflective of who you people are. So you want to comment on that?
I'll comment on that. So I think it is the government. I see that in my role as deputy mayor, right? It is how we do business, how we've done business for years, right? It's a government structure that's been in place. You and I never had a part of implementing that structure.
At all, right.
And I think, our schools are the same way. And I think when we're talking about community schools, we're changing that a little bit. I think we need to change the way we engage our parents and our families. We need to make those moves. We are no longer the school district back when I went to school.
Right.
And it's changing. So we have to change that. And so parents hold a critical role in the education of our children. And they play a huge part. They played a part in my role, and I'm sure in yours,
yes,
right, in helping promote that. But we have to ensure that we're providing our teachers the tools.
Right.
Our parents the tools, because our parents are dealing with so many other things, right? They're working 2 or 3 jobs sometimes. They're trying to just pay the rent. They're dealing with real issues, right? It's not like parents who, you have a mother working, from home, right? Who has all the time in the world to go into the classroom, right? So we as a community, we as a school, need to be able to understand the challenges of our mothers and our fathers, and understand their struggles, and be able to be innovative in how we engage them, and how we bring them part of the process. It is a two-way responsibility, right? It is not what you're saying. Where
other man's coming back in now. I'm about to bring other man back out.
Okay.
So other man's jumping all the way back out now.
Right.
Okay. So here's other man. Okay. So other man is going to say, well, I understand all of those things, and I think you're right. I think in those situations, we have to help because we have to be able to help people that are in need, to assist them in pushing forward. And I think that, Madison is, needs to improve, but there's a lot of things that are in place here that aren't in place in other cities to help push people forward. Right. But the other man comment about responsibility it goes back to, what we were talking about earlier, which is the culture of the importance of education. So, where does the importance of education starts? It starts in the home, right? It starts in what you see every day. It starts in what you talk about, right? So my daughter, for instance, when we talk and she's like, oh, my friend does this and that, I'll go pick up a book, I'll open it up, and I give it to them. I say, read a paragraph. They look at me like it's funny. I said, if you can't read a paragraph of Harry Potter, don't talk to me about what you're doing. You have a lot of work to do. And I don't do it to embarrass them. I do it to try to instill a sense of responsibility, a sense of no smoke screens. No smoke screens. Be real. Everything that you stand on has to be real. Fakeness doesn't get you anywhere. And those are the things that I want to, if I could just take it and break, I just want to break it, that cut corner. I always say there's out of struggle comes great reward. Through all the things that we've struggled through in our lives. And we both know that struggle. I tell my daughter, I've been on every end of the food chain, every end,
Right.
And I'm not afraid to go back to any part of it because I know how to manage myself. I know how to I know what's important now, So having said those things, it's the choices that we make in life. It's the people that we choose to associate ourselves with. It's the life that we choose to live. And those are the things I want to challenge my community on, and I challenge your community on as well. Let's go back to the old way, what was important.
Yeah.
Family, education. No, everybody doesn't want to be a lawyer. No, everyone can't be a doctor. But there's so many productive things that you can be to be productive in your community. And let me just add real quick, because what people forget is, having an officer that lives in the community, having a carpenter that lives in the community, having people that have their own businesses that are generating revenue, that are working, living in your community adds to your schools, makes your schools better because those tax dollars are going into the schools. So the homes are being taken care of because the families can afford to take care of the homes. Now industry and other businesses are coming to those areas. So now you've created a space that you look in other communities and wish you have. And what I want to say is we have the tools.
Right.
All we have to do is sit together and build together and just say we're going to have this community.
Right.
So would you like to comment on that real quick?
Yeah, I think that is why I'm running for Madison School Board. I think having that bigger picture perspective, as you're talking about, as a city, and how schools play an important role in the success of our community and our city. So, I think I bring that holistic perspective to the school board. I understand the importance of a strong public education system because I see it every day. I see it in how it plays in everything that we do. And we need that voice on the board right now. Not only do I bring the voice of our communities of color, but I also bring the voice of a professional who understands holistically how public education plays in a role in our community, in our city, in so many different areas.
Yes.
So I think it just it makes sense, right? It is a voice that I think is missing from the school board right now.
Yes.
We cannot be so focused on one area or one specialty, right? And because then we forget about everything else.
Yes.
And so we have to have somebody who has the big picture at the table when we're making these big policy and budget decisions, right? Somebody who understands it from the personal perspective, from the communities of color perspective, from also the bigger perspective on how schools play a role in economic development and our bigger city challenges and issues.
Economic development, community development,
right.
self-esteem development,
Exactly.
It's everything.
It's everything.
It's the seed.
It's everything. So, and I think just going back to, the parents and how they play a role in this. I think that is critical. But that does not mean there is a breakdown in what's happening in our family, and I think that is a community responsibility.
I agree.
But we cannot give up on our children who, once they enter those doors in the morning, and those doors shut, they are the responsibility of our community, our school. And we need to be able to engage them in every way, however way we can. We have their attention. How do we do it in the best way possible so that when they leave that school, that they may come home to the challenges of what's happening in our home, but they are leaving with that sense of hope from a teacher who just told them that they will become somebody and that they should not give up.
You've been inspired.
Exactly. That inspiration and that hope is what our schools need to bring to our children who are struggling with so many challenges in our classrooms. And that makes it better for everybody.
I agree.
Right?
I think schools forget that outside of inspiring students, that they inspire parents.
Yes, exactly.
They definitely inspire parents.
Yeah.
You know, and I think by inviting the parents into the schools and not the traditional ways that we want to make them come into the schools, but in ways by communicating with them, inviting them into the schools to participate and help in ways that are beneficial for everyone else are things that we should definitely be thinking about.
I mean, Mr. McPike, a principal from East High School, when I was at East, he would come to our neighborhoods, right? As I mentioned earlier, he would talk to the grandmas and their grandfathers, right? I mean, he would talk to them, and he would talk to my grandma and grandpa, right?
Oh,
who had a language barrier.
Oh, yeah.
And my parents, you know, and it was that extra time, and all the kids would just be so excited, or they would run and be like, "Oh, who's in trouble now?" Right?
Yeah.
But you know, that it is not so much when we talk about City Hall or the school district. It is about how we go into our communities, and you know, it's not that separation that we've had, right? It is. We need to do more engagement in our communities and do our work out there, because that is how we learn about the challenges and figure out how to build those relationships and have these conversations.
Yeah, but that's what we're talking about the entire time. We're talking about that family.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, because that's what you're talking about, that family. I used to go to school and be scared because they knew my grandmother's had her. I thought they had her number on speed dial.
Exactly.
I'm going to call your grandmother.
Right.
I'd have teachers say, you know, I go to church with your grandmother.
Right.
Do you really want me to have a conversation? When I go, no,
That's
I really
huge.
don't.
That's
you know,
huge,
so
right.
community. So we have to get back to what we lost. So that to me, Gloria,
Yes.
Ms. Reyes, because
Yes.
I know you,
Yeah.
I am so happy to have you as a candidate.
Thank
Because
you.
I know that you bring that to the table and you bring those perspectives.
Yes.
Okay, you definitely do. We're going to jump right into our biggest conversation.
Okay.
You know,
Yes.
the po-po. I'm going to say the po-po. The
That
police.
always comes into conversation when I'm talking. It's
The
always
po-po.
Yeah.
You're going to talk about the police. And we're just
Right.
going to jump right in. We're going to talk about it very briefly. Then we're going to take a small break, and then we're going to dive right back into it.
Okay.
Okay, but let's go into it. Well, policing in the schools.
Yes.
I'm just going to jump right out and say what I said before. Growing up the way that I did, I struggle with having officers in the school and what they can potentially represent and cause for students of color in terms of, I don't want to send my kids to school to get a charge so they can go straight to prison. Okay? But I've also been on the other side where I have had an officer in a school in Apple Valley, Minnesota, with my daughter, and it was one of the best relationships that I've had. So I struggle with, you know, the history of policing in African American communities, and my experiences have been, which I've said have been the good, the bad, and the ugly. And I'll say it again. What's surprising me and worries me is that the negative experiences seem to be with younger police officers more so than they are with mature or older police officers. And that worries me because I think I would have thought it would have been the opposite.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
dive right in.
Sure.
You know, let's talk about that.
So, you know, I mean, you know, when I grew up went to East High School, I probably, the way I behaved would have came out of there with a disorderly conduct charge of some sort if officers were in our schools back in the day. That being said, I mean, we are in a different day.
Right.
We just had a school shooting just recently, right? We have school shooting. People are coming into our schools and they're endangering our children all over the country. And so that is a real challenge and an issue. I think that when we talk about officers in our schools and how it fed into the disproportionate of arrest of our black children entering into the criminal justice system, everybody holds accountability for that, right? It is not just the officers. I think it is, we are placing officers in a situation where they're having to solve all of our social issues, right? Every little thing that happens in our schools or in our classrooms, officers are being called to resolve them. That needs to change. So we have to change the way we use officers in our schools. We can't use them the way we have used them in the past. They have to be, we have to set policies and procedures of how they are being used, and be able to, support other ways of dealing with conflict in our classrooms. And how we do that is by understanding that if something does happen, that we can't just call the police, right? We call a behavioral health specialist, a social worker. We figure out how we can support that child who's dealing with any situation, right? But at the same time, we have to, officers in our schools do bring a value. Officer Rossetti, who is an officer with the Madison School District, started restorative justice in our schools.
Really? Okay.
So restorative justice is all over the place, right? Everybody's saying that term. Everybody wants to really move in that direction. But that's started by an officer, right? That is a type of officer that we need in our schools. So we need officers who are trained, officers who understand the student, population. So they do bring a value in our schools, and we need to ensure we pick the right officer for the school.
Well, we're going to talk about that in just a second.
Sure.
We'll be right back after this. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Conversation Shop. We're going to dive right back into policing in the schools, the po-po. So I'm just going to jump right in. I'm invoking Brother Man.
Okay.
So Brother Man is coming out right now. So Brother Man is saying, no, I don't like police officers in the school. They represent an overseer and a very negative thing to my kids. I don't want my children going to school worried about point blank going to jail. How do I know they're going to be fair with my kids? We're already dealing with these issues in the community, in the workplace, and every place else. I'm not setting my kids up. So prior to doing that, I'm going to just snatch them out of the schools. They don't need to go to any school that's going to put them in a situation like that. So I definitely don't want that. And we all know the history of policing and the history of police and people of color. So that's my issue. I just don't see the need for it. I think it's intimidating. I think it's intimidating to the kids. And then I don't think they're going to be fair. How are you going to tell me as a parent to make me feel good that you're going to have someone in the schools that I can trust and feel comfortable that when given a situation between my child and someone that looks different from them, that my child is going to be treated fairly and not be treated as if they're a criminal or they did something bad.
Right.
You want to talk about that a little bit?
Sure, Brother Man. This is a really hot topic, and it is a complex issue. We can't, as I said before, officers do bring a value into our schools. We need to change the way we use them, and I think that we can't ignore the historical issues of what law enforcement officers have done or been a part of, right? To build that distrust between our communities of color and law enforcement. And we have to deal with it. That is what it is. But we also have to recognize the realities of what's happening in our classrooms, right? We have kids who are being bullied. We have, situations where there are fights that, students are bringing knives to school. Kids are bringing guns to schools. There's a lot of stuff happening in our schools that people don't see or recognize, right? And I want to make sure that our students and our teachers feel safe in the classroom and in our schools. And so, you know, as I mentioned earlier, active shooters. So we have to change the way we've used officers in the past. And
Brother Man's about to come out
I
again.
know,
Brother
I
Man's
hear
over
ya.
here shaking.
I hear you. But I think we have to change the way we use them. But they do play a critical role. I would rather have a safe school, a safe environment for all kids.
Okay.
What I wouldn't want to happen is we take officers out of our schools. The situation, if we don't deal with the underlying issues and our challenges of what's happening in our schools, why are our kids becoming so violent? Why is this happening, right? The situations are going to happen anyway. So officers are going to be called. What I would rather want as a parent of having, you know, children in our public school, Madison schools, is a officer who has built that trust and relationship like you talked about, right, in Minneapolis, where you know, your daughter was able to establish a relationship with an officer, and I think that's important. I would rather have that than an officer out in the street who doesn't understand our children, right, our students, and how to interact, right, who just comes and does the job. I would rather have somebody like an Officer Rossetti. You know, when I was an officer, right, I like to think that I was able to build trust and relationships with students. And that is what we need. And so when I say we have to change the way we've used officers in our schools, we have to be really critical about what types of officers we bring in our schools to work.
Yes, because that's where Brother Man is coming out.
Yes, the training, understanding their own biases and what they bring into the arrest decision-making process. As you talk about that situation where you know, seeing one person a threat versus another.
Yes.
Yeah, so I mean, I think that's important. We have to recognize that, and we do have good officers who understand that, who do that, day in and day out. So we have to deal with it that way. So I think if we don't deal with the challenges in our schools or what's happening, right, we're still going to get the calls for service. Officers are still going to be called. So how do we really work towards? I can see ourselves working to a pathway where we won't need officers in our schools.
Thank you. That's what I want to talk about.
So I can see us going that way, but right now, reality, it's just not. I think we're just putting our students at risk and we're putting our teachers at risk.
So if I'm understanding you saying we're not being realistic.
We're not being realistic.
About the need of having them in there. And to be honest with you, I agree.
Yeah.
But here's the question I have for you. You know, what are we doing about, this is what I'll say. I think it should go back to the way it used to be. Again, you hear me talking about, we had a no tolerance rule, right? You came to school, brought a knife, you got a gun, you did something that violent, you got expelled. Nobody dealt with you coming to school anymore. I don't say you throw a kid away, but that child has forfeited, I'm sorry, his right to be participating in the same way that everyone else has. And I'm sorry, there's repercussions to decisions that we make. Now, I don't think the repercussions to that should be his or her life being destroyed. Exactly. I don't agree with that.
Yes.
I don't agree with that. But what I will say is that the schools have a responsibility to be a school and to make it safe. Not to be mini prisons, not to be juvenile detention centers, which a lot of them are becoming, to not do that.
Right.
Schools need to go back to being places for learning, teaching, motivating, inspiring, and pushing kids forward and being reflective of everything that's good in our community.
Right.
You know, you want to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think our students are are bringing in what they're experiencing at home or in the community into our schools, essentially, right? All the challenges that they're faced with are moving into our schools. Social media plays a critical role in that. But I mean, I just want to tell a quick story.
Go ahead.
A homeless child who I ran into, who he was waving people down. He was looking for help, and it was one of those days where it was just cold.
Okay.
Right? African-American kid, middle school kid. And I pulled over, asked him what he needed. He was almost in tears, right? He said, "I've been here for an hour waiting for help. The bus is not coming. I have nowhere to go. I need some help." Got him in my car. I learned that he was homeless. His family's staying in a shelter. He's a middle school student.
Oh, wow.
So how do we expect our child like that to succeed in our schools when everything around them is telling them that they can't, right? So, I mean, I think we have to deal with what's happening with that child, right? So if a child is bringing a knife to school or an incident happens, right, we have to deal, like you said, we can't throw them away.
Right.
We have to figure out, well, what's happening and how do we wrap ourselves around this child so that it doesn't happen again.
Well, I'm going to add something to
go
that
ahead.
story. I have a friend that came out of the similar situation, and my comment for that child is I would love for him to meet my friend that came out of that situation because he's a very successful person now.
Yes. Yeah.
Extremely successful.
Yeah.
And I'm going back to community being more involved into the schools. I just think that's so
It is so important.
it's so important. But you know, just to add real quickly, and then I'll let you leave us with some final thoughts.
Okay.
Is you know, the bruh man coming out of me is this. With the, I want to talk about not having the need police in the schools. You know, and going back to what I said, the no tolerance thing. And what I mean by that is, you shouldn't have to. Schools should not be dealing with those things because once schools begin to deal with those things, they're no longer schools.
Right.
They're not. They function like detention centers.
Right.
And when you place students in detention centers, you can't get upset when they start to act like they're people that are in detention centers. And my worry is when you have the principal who's going to become a warden, the teachers
Right.
who become the COs,
Right. Right.
and then the police officer is the SWAT enforcer team that's coming in every time you raise your voice or a teacher decides she's going to tell and say you did something.
Right.
Where's the arbitration with that? Who says they even did something? So just because she said I did it, because you're going to hear that from students too, and you hear that from our students of color all the time. They're being misrepresented, right? So how do you address that, right? And then I want to add as bruh man, don't put somebody that's been working out in the field for 2-3 years in the schools because he's going to treat my child like he's a criminal. Don't do that because I'm never going to be okay with that. And I'm going to tell you, I'm going to fight it with every last breath that I have. Why not have a program, because we live in a very educated city, Madison College and University, where you have students that are interested in having that kind of job. They have a passion for it.
Right.
Right? They're coming out. They go right into those schools and those positions with a passion and an understanding of how to build those relationships with the students, the parents, and the teachers to make it work.
Right.
Now, why do I say that? Because prior to graduating from UW-Madison, I actually went into the schools. And I was a liaison. And what I did was work with the at-risk kids. So I agree with you. There's kids that were coming to school hungry, didn't have anything, and everybody can't do this, but I went out and bought little bars. I'd give them when they came to class with an attitude. I'd set them in the back and let them know, you know, find out what was going on. But what kids also have to know is their structure. You can't keep letting them make excuses because then as adults, they're going to keep making excuses.
Right.
They're going to keep looking for help. I don't want us raising children, right? No kids. I want us to raise children that are prepared to become adults.
Right.
So I'll leave you with your final thoughts.
Thank you. Well, thanks for having me today. You know, I so appreciate the conversation. This is great. So, you know, I am running for Madison School Board. That is my new venture, my next venture. So I'm really excited about it. I think I do bring a lot of value into on the school board. But essentially, I've committed myself to public service throughout my whole career. I'm asking the community to vote on April 3rd for Gloria Reyes. I think I am a product of this community. I am what we do well, what we do great in this community, and I want to ensure that I am a role model for our children in our schools. That, you know, someone who came out of poverty, someone who had many struggles in high school, and has become a very successful woman and has done that because of the support of the community. So it is my opportunity to give back to a community that has helped me and supported me all these years. So I just ask the community one more time to give me that opportunity and this chance to give back to a school district that has supported me and continues to support my children who are in the schools.
Well, Gloria, I'm privileged, quite frankly, to have you
Thank you.
on my show.
Thank you.
Very blessed to call you friend as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Madison, quite frankly, will be blessed to have you as a member. You have my vote.
Great.
You
Thank
definitely do.
Thank you.
And again, I want to thank you for being on the show. And I got to give you a big hug. This is the Conversation Shop. We give hugs.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you very,
Thank
very
you.
much.
Thank you.
And I also want to thank my audience for joining us and for taking the time to have a conversation with Cedric Page and Miss Gloria Reyes. Thank you.